Every obstacle in your path is not meant to stop you. It is meant to shape you. Arjun's journey was filled with challenges, but with each hurdle, he grew stronger, wiser, and more determined. Will he let hardships break him? Or will he prove that perseverance and courage can turn any setback into a stepping stone to success? The sun was just beginning to rise over the small village of Lakshapur, casting a golden glow across the fields and narrow dirt roads. Birds chirped in the distance, their melodies blending with the rustling of leaves as a soft breeze passed through. It was the kind of morning that filled people with hope and energy, but for Arjun, today was different. Today was the day he would leave everything behind and embark on a journey that would define his future. Arjun had always been a dreamer, but he was not just a man of dreams. He was a man of action. Since childhood, he had watched his father toil endlessly in the fields, struggling to provide for the family. Their village was small, and opportunities were scarce. Most people accepted their fate, content with the simplicity of their lives, but Arjun wanted more. He wanted to build something of his own, something that would give his family a life beyond mere survival. For years, he had saved every coin he could, working extra hours in the fields, taking up odd jobs, and even learning basic trade skills from a merchant who occasionally passed through their village. Finally, after years of hard work and planning, he was ready to leave for the city, where he hoped to start a small business and create a better future. With a determined heart, Arjun packed his belongings into a simple cloth bag. His mother, teary-eyed, prepared a small bundle of food for his journey. His father, a man of few words, placed a firm hand on his shoulder and simply said, "Remember, obstacles will come. Don't turn back." Arjun nodded, his heart swelling with a mix of excitement and nervousness. He bowed to his parents, touched their feet in respect, and stepped onto the road leading out of the village. The journey ahead was not easy. He had to cross the mountain pass, a path known for its challenges, before reaching the city. But he was ready. As he walked, the morning mist still lingering in the air, he felt a strange sense of freedom. The world stretched before him, vast and full of possibilities. The road was uneven, scattered with small rocks and patches of dried mud from the previous night's rain. But Arjun walked with purpose, his steps firm, his mind focused. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. The gentle morning coolness gave way to the midday heat. Arjun wiped the sweat off his brow and took a sip of water from the small flask he carried. The road became steeper as he reached the beginning of the mountain pass. Large trees lined the path, their roots twisting through the earth like ancient guardians watching over travelers. As he rounded a bend, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. A massive boulder lay across the path, completely blocking the way forward. Arjun's brows furrowed in confusion. This path was frequently used by traders and travelers. How had this boulder ended up here? He looked around, but there was no one in sight. The realization hit him. He was alone, and if he wanted to move forward, he would have to deal with this obstacle himself. He set his bag down and examined the boulder. It was huge, at least twice his size, with a rough, weathered surface. He pressed his hands against it and pushed with all his strength. His muscles strained, his feet dug into the ground, but the rock didn't budge an inch. Arjun took a step back, breathing heavily. He had expected challenges on his journey, but he hadn't anticipated something like this so soon. His father's words echoed in his mind. Obstacles will come. Don't turn back. He wasn't going to let this stop him. He scanned his surroundings, looking for anything that could help. His eyes landed on a thick tree branch lying nearby. An idea formed in his mind. He picked up the branch and wedged it beneath the boulder, using it as a lever. With all his strength, he pressed down. The boulder shifted slightly. Encouraged, he pushed harder. The strain in his arms and legs intensified, but he refused to give up. Inch by inch, the boulder began to roll, and with one final push, it moved enough for him to squeeze through. Arjun collapsed onto the ground, panting. His arms ached, his body was drenched in sweat, but he felt victorious. He had overcome the first major obstacle of his journey. He took a moment to catch his breath, then picked up his bag and continued forward. As he walked, he thought about what had just happened. The boulder had seemed like an impossible barrier at first, but by thinking differently and refusing to give up, he had found a way through. Perhaps life's obstacles weren't meant to stop people. They were meant to test their determination. The road ahead remained difficult. The path wound through dense forests, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. Birds called to each other from the treetops, and in the distance, the faint sound of a flowing river reached his ears. Despite the beauty of his surroundings, Arjun remained focused. He had learned an important lesson. Challenges would come, but persistence and creativity would always find a way through. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Arjun found a small clearing beside the path. He decided to rest for the night. He gathered some dry leaves and twigs, striking flint to start a small fire. The warmth of the flames comforted him, casting flickering shadows around him. As he sat by the fire, eating the simple meal his mother had packed, he reflected on his journey so far. He was only at the beginning, but he had already faced and conquered his first obstacle. He knew more challenges lay ahead, but now he felt ready. The stars twinkled above him, and a sense of peace washed over him. He wasn't just on a journey to the city. He was on a journey of growth, of transformation. Every step, every struggle, every victory would shape him into the man he was meant to be. Tomorrow he would continue. He didn't know what awaited him, but he was no longer afraid, because now he understood obstacles were not the end of the road. They were merely tests, pushing him to prove how badly he wanted to succeed. And Arjun? He was ready to prove himself. Arjun awoke to the sound of birds chirping in the trees above him. The fire he had built the night before had died down, leaving only a few glowing embers. The sky was a soft shade of pink as the sun slowly climbed over the horizon. He stretched his sore muscles and rubbed his eyes, feeling the ache of the previous day's struggles still lingering in his body. But despite the exhaustion, he felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had overcome his first major challenge, the massive boulder that had blocked his path, and he had learned an important lesson. Obstacles were not meant to stop him, but to test his determination. He quickly gathered his things, slung his bag over his shoulder, and set off once again. The mountain path was still steep, winding its way through dense forests and rocky slopes. The morning air was crisp, carrying with it the fresh scent of pine and damp earth. He could hear the distant sound of a river flowing somewhere in the valley below. As he walked, his mind was filled with thoughts of what lay ahead. He knew that reaching the city would not be easy. He had only just begun his journey, and there would certainly be more challenges along the way. But he was ready. He had come too far to turn back now. After a few hours of walking, he reached a small clearing where the path split into two directions. One path seemed well-trodden, the dirt packed firm by the footsteps of many travelers before him. The other path, however, was narrow and rugged, barely visible through the overgrown grass and thick underbrush. Arjun hesitated for a moment, unsure of which path to take. As he stood there contemplating, an elderly man appeared from the direction of the well-trodden path. He was dressed in simple robes, carrying a wooden staff in one hand. His face was lined with wrinkles, but his eyes held a sharp wisdom that suggested he had seen many things in his lifetime. "Young man," the old man greeted him with a nod. "You seem to be at a crossroads. Where are you headed?" "I'm traveling to the city," Arjun replied, gesturing toward the path ahead. "But I'm not sure which way to go." The old man smiled knowingly. "The wide path is easier, but it is longer and filled with distractions. Many travelers take it, but not all reach their destination. The narrow path is difficult, filled with trials, but it will get you to your goal much faster." Arjun considered his words carefully. He had already faced challenges along his journey, and he knew that nothing worth achieving came easily. Without hesitation, he nodded. "I'll take the narrow path." The old man's smile widened, as if he had expected this answer. "Good choice," he said. "Remember, obstacles will come, but the strongest hearts never waver." With that, he continued on his way, disappearing into the distance. Arjun took a deep breath and stepped onto the narrow path. Almost immediately, he realized that this would not be easy. The trail was rough and uneven, with large roots snaking across the ground and sharp rocks jutting out from the dirt. Every step required caution. As he climbed higher into the mountains, the terrain became even more challenging. The path narrowed to the point where one misstep could send him tumbling down the rocky slopes below. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to focus. He had chosen this path, and he would see it through. After an hour of careful walking, he came across another obstacle. A small wooden bridge stretched across a deep ravine, its planks old and worn. Some of the boards were missing, and the ropes that held the bridge together looked frayed. Arjun hesitated, his stomach tightening at the thought of crossing it. He tested the first plank with his foot. It creaked under his weight, but held firm. Slowly, he took another step, gripping the rope tightly. The bridge swayed slightly with each movement, and for a moment, fear gripped him. But he took a deep breath, steadying himself. He couldn't let fear control him. Step by step, he moved forward, each movement deliberate and careful. The wind howled through the ravine, making the bridge sway even more, but Arjun kept his focus on the other side. When he finally reached solid ground, he exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He had done it. He continued his journey, pushing forward despite the growing fatigue in his legs. The narrow path tested his endurance, forcing him to navigate steep inclines and unstable ground. But as the hours passed, he began to feel something shift within him. He was no longer just traveling to the city. He was proving to himself that he could overcome anything. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Arjun reached a small village nestled between the hills. The sight of it filled him with relief. He hadn't planned to stop in any villages along the way, but after the challenges of the day, he knew he needed to rest. The village was quiet, with only a few people moving about. He approached an elderly woman sitting outside her home, weaving a basket from dried grass. "Excuse me, ma'am," Arjun said politely. "I'm traveling to the city and was wondering if there was a place I could rest for the night." The woman looked up at him, her eyes kind. "You look exhausted, young man. Come inside. You can stay with us tonight." Grateful, Arjun followed her into the small but warm home. The woman introduced him to her husband, an old farmer with a gentle smile. They offered him a simple meal of rice and lentils, and as they ate, they asked him about his journey. Arjun told them about the challenges he had faced, the boulder, the narrow path, the bridge. The old man listened carefully, nodding in understanding. "You are learning what many never understand," the farmer said. "Life will always place obstacles in your way. Some will seem impossible, others will test your patience. But each one is there for a reason. They shape you, make you stronger." Arjun thought about his journey. So far, he had faced fears, uncertainty, and moments of doubt. But each time, he had pushed forward. He had found solutions, summoned courage, and refused to give up. That night, as he lay on a simple mat in the corner of the hut, he stared at the wooden ceiling above him. He was tired, his body ached, but his spirit felt stronger than ever. Tomorrow, he would continue his journey. The city was still far away, and he had no doubt that more challenges awaited him. But he was ready. He was no longer afraid of obstacles. They were not meant to stop him, but to teach him. With that thought, he closed his eyes, letting sleep take him, knowing that with every challenge he faced, he was becoming the person he was meant to be. Arjun woke up to the sound of the rooster crowing outside the small hut. The first rays of sunlight peeked through the tiny window, casting a soft glow on the wooden walls. He stretched his aching muscles and sat up, remembering the events of the previous day. The narrow path, the swaying bridge, the kind elderly couple. Each had played a role in his journey, teaching him valuable lessons. He stepped outside, inhaling the crisp morning air. The village was coming to life. Farmers were already tending to their fields. Children ran along the dirt paths, and the smell of freshly baked bread filled the air. The old woman who had given him shelter the night before approached him with a warm smile. "You must be hungry," she said, handing him a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Take this with you. It's a long road ahead." Arjun accepted it gratefully, bowing in respect. "Thank you for your kindness. I won't forget it." The old man, standing nearby, gave him a firm nod. "Remember what we spoke about. Obstacles are not meant to stop you. They are meant to shape you." Arjun repeated the words in his mind as he tightened the strap of his bag and set off once again. The city was still far away, but he felt stronger than ever. His journey had already tested his patience, endurance, and courage, and he knew there was more to come. The path ahead was wider now, but that did not mean it was easier. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the road became more challenging. The forest thinned, giving way to open plains where the wind blew harshly, kicking up dust that stung his eyes. The heat was relentless, and with every step, his energy seemed to drain. At midday, he came across a small stream and decided to rest. He sat on a rock by the water, splashing cool liquid onto his face. As he ate the food given to him by the old woman, he thought about how far he had come. He was no longer the same boy who had left his village. He was learning, growing, and becoming stronger with each passing day. As he rested, he noticed a commotion on the road ahead. A group of travelers stood around a wooden cart, their voices raised in frustration. Curious, Arjun approached. "What happened?" he asked. A man with a thick beard turned to him. "The wheel of our cart is broken. We've been stuck here for hours. We don't have the tools to fix it, and we can't move forward without it." Arjun observed the broken wheel. It was damaged, but not beyond repair. He remembered the lessons he had learned from the merchant in his village, who had taught him a little about fixing things. "I think I can help," Arjun said. The travelers looked at him skeptically, but they stepped aside. Arjun took a closer look, assessing the damage. He found a fallen tree branch nearby and used it to reinforce the broken part of the wheel. Then, with a piece of cloth and some rope, he secured it tightly. "Try it now," he said. The bearded man hesitated, then slowly pushed the cart forward. It wobbled at first but held firm. A smile spread across the travelers' faces. "You've saved us a lot of trouble, young man," the man said, clapping him on the back. "Where are you headed?" "To the city," Arjun replied. "Then join us. We're going the same way. You've earned your place with us." Grateful for the company, Arjun accepted. Traveling alone had taught him resilience, but he also understood the value of companionship. Together, they continued down the road, sharing stories along the way. As the day wore on, the journey became smoother. The travelers were kind, offering him food and conversation. Arjun listened to their tales of life in the city, learning more about the world beyond his village. But, just as things seemed to be going well, another challenge presented itself. The road ahead was blocked by a deep pit caused by a recent landslide. The path was too wide to jump across, and there was no way around it. The travelers groaned in frustration. "This is impossible," one of them muttered. "We'll have to turn back and find another route." Arjun stared at the pit. Turning back would cost them days. He refused to accept defeat so easily. He examined the surroundings and noticed thick vines hanging from a sturdy tree nearby. An idea formed in his mind. "If we use the vines and the wooden planks from the cart, we can build a makeshift bridge," he suggested. The travelers looked doubtful, but seeing the determination in his eyes, they agreed to try. Working together, they tied the vines tightly, securing them to both sides of the pit. They placed wooden planks across the vines, creating a shaky but functional bridge. One by one, they carefully crossed. The bridge creaked under their weight, but it held firm. When the last person reached the other side safely, a cheer erupted. "You're something special, Arjun," the bearded man said. "You don't see obstacles as problems. You see them as opportunities." Arjun smiled, realizing how much he had changed. Each challenge had taught him something valuable. His journey had not just been about reaching the city, but about becoming the person he was meant to be. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they finally saw it, the city. Its towering walls and bustling streets stretched before them, filled with endless possibilities. Arjun's heart swelled with excitement. He had made it, but he knew this was just the beginning. More challenges would come, but he was no longer afraid. He had faced obstacles, endured hardships, and proven to himself that he was capable of overcoming anything. With renewed confidence, he stepped forward into the city, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead.